Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Be Kind Rewind. So, I would have to say that this movie had gone on to inspire a lot of fan-made movies, a lot of people who are to go on and remake a film via their own perspectives with XYZ amount of budget. Meaning, I've seen a lot of YouTubers go on and completely recreate a film with $20 or $50 or so that kind of budget, like try to recreate a whole entire film within a shoestring budget or just a minimal budget. And really, I think this movie created that, where you just start to see a lot of people. It's like, hey, I've always ever wanted to do this movie, and since we have stuff like Twitch and YouTube and all these kind of platforms that we can put this movie on, why don't we just go on and finally make a movie? Just try it out, just see what happens. So I think that has inspired a number of people. Now, let me also say, Be Kind Rewind is it's a fun movie, but it's a really one-off film. It's very nostalgic. You would of course have to go on and even know what VHS tapes really are, the VCR is, and so it's really relying on people knowing what all of this stuff really still is. Even a DVD, we have streaming now. Everything is to go through streaming, hence why a lot of mom and pop video stores are all closing down, because people are seeing how convenient it really is to go on and just rent a movie for $3, and instead of having to go all the way to a store to go on and rent a movie, to just kind of turn around and have to deliver it in a very quick-paced manner. So with that said, there's a lot about this that it's you have to be in the know, or you have to remember, or you have to go on and there's a lot of these movies that they're just rattling a list of movies on a screen, and I'm just okay. I guess it's a love letter to movies that were done during that time, but still, really, and I get also that they couldn't have covered every single thing, so they kind of had to go through certain beats and certain whatevers. And there was a lot of this movie that was really it was fun to kind of see their version of something, whether it be that they were trying to do something completely different than what was really on in the movies and stuff like that, or they had to kind of recreate certain things. But yeah, so I appreciate this movie, but I'll probably never watch it again. This movie is probably going to be a one-off thing, because really it's just a goofy film that I think is to really just inspire a number of people. But yeah, it's just a goofy film. Because we have this whole jazz musician called Fats Waller that is to have this inside of this these parody or remake movies. And even that, we have just a cluster of clips just randomly being shown, and then at some point they have to show a bunch of these movies all being made at one time, and there's maybe a handful of movies out of all the stuff that they've listed where it's okay, I can see a handful of these movies still being like interesting films to go and check out, but like a lot of other ones are just like, and even like especially the ones they even picked in this film, I'm like, why that one? Like, why go on and cover like this movie? Uh, like, what was the importance of that? but um, but anyways, with that said, yeah, um, I think I'm just gonna go on and go into spoilers about this movie because it's simple enough. Or maybe we'll tee this movie up. And where can you also say that you can conveniently watch this movie? Where it doesn't seem that there's a convenient streaming thing for this movie. Because you can rent it in a number of different places. So I'm going to give you a number of apps you can dare in fact stream this movie for absolutely free because that's the new way of doing things. So you can go on to a Google search and search the word Letter C Movies app, and hopefully dare in fact find this app, download it, be able to say you can watch this movie for absolutely free. You can also go on to a Google Play Store and search the word TV Crush, and you'll find an app where you'll have a logo that says HD Movies with a crown off to the side. Download that app and be able to go on and hopefully watch Be Kind Rewind for absolutely free. If not, you can be able to see a cluster of other films. You can go into a Google search and search the word Fox HD Movies, and you'll more than likely have a app that will have the logo say Fox HD Movies, but a title will say something different. It'll say Play 1080p HD Movies, but like if you search the first word that I just said about Fox HD Movies, you should be fine. So so teeing it up, what is this movie about? So Danny Glover, of course, is to be playing Mr. Fletcher here, and Mr. Fletcher is to find out that his uh, business is, or his building is to get remodeled, and is to forcibly have Mr. Fletcher move his business elsewhere. That eventually his business will be relocated. And Mr. Fletcher, of course, does not want to do that. He wants to stay here and not go elsewhere. And plus, Mr. Fletcher isn't exactly, like, his business isn't exactly booming anyways, with VHS rentals being a thing. So we go on into this story and have a guy named Jerry who at some point via going to this power plant, but like I would call it, like they go into this like electrical place, and Jerry of course is to get so electrocuted that he all of a sudden is to become magnetized, and Jerry is to go on and become really sick, making his way back into this video store, and he is to erase every single VHS tape because Jerry is magnetized. And so now Mike has to figure out some way to keep Mr. Fletcher's store afloat by, instead of going on and giving somebody a certain movie that they want, he is to go on and completely have to recreate this whole entire movie to then go on and give this person who is never to see this movie before. And because I guess luckily for all of these cult classic films, this is everyone's first time watching all of these. And it's kind of interesting to also see stuff like tube TVs that are put into this film. Tube TVs are kind of the TVs that they use through a bulk of this film. And I'm like, yeah, like, because now we have all those like flat screens and LCDs and plasma TVs and stuff like that. And like even now, like we have the kind of like the weird goofy TVs, like the 3D TVs or the curved TVs that I think those were kind of a joke. I think somebody was just like, "Hey, like let's see if we can just sell people a curved TV and see if they'll be interested in it." Come to find out, no, people thought a curved TV was stupid, and like I would probably say the same thing. For those of you who bought a curved TV and it's like, "Oh no, curved TV is great." Okay, sure, but like why? Why would you buy a curved TV? That's my gripe. I don't understand that at all. Uh, but anyways, and I hope that that 3D TV is to give you just really like freaking like. I bet a 3D TV makes a lot of people freaking sick. Um, yeah, I don't know how anybody could watch a 3D TV all day, but maybe that's just me. Like that's like going and like consistently doing like Oculus Rift like for like a whole day. Like I'm sure at some point your eyes would just be like, "Bleh," when you're like just consistently watching that for X amount of stretch of time. So, anyways, moving on. So with that said, let's just go on into this movie. Let's go into spoilers. It's a very goofy film, and at the end of the day, hopefully, I can say all of this stuff that happens in this film in a very quick pace, so I can get out of here and go on into doing other things for the day. Because more than likely, there might be a number of people that may not care about this film, but really, like I was to easily want to go on and do this because there's just a number of films all inside this one. So I was like, well, hey, this could really just help if eventually I wanted to go on and say, like, ooh, like it seems that people were interested in this film. Oh, cool. Like, so, like, stuff like Stay Tuned and stuff like this is to go on and just kind of help me eventually go on and find future things to review. So, why not go on and do a movie that goes on and talks about a number of different films? It always helps. So, with that said, let's go into that double five time territory. Let's just go into, of course, spoiler time, spoiler time. It's about the time I get to spoil this movie. So, we go on into this film, and so they are to, of course, to say in the very beginning of this film that supposedly everybody's thinking that jazz is to start in Harlem, but instead, actually, jazz started in um, uh, Pasiak or Pasiak, 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 whatever town this is, and so we, of course, have this documentary talking about Fat Waller, this pianist or piano player that was to be a big jazz musician for this location, and so they're going on and they're telling us his whole backstory on how supposedly he was to be born right in the Be Kind Rewind store, which, come to find out, we have Mr. Fletcher that is to tell Mike in the story that that actually isn't true. That Mr. Fletcher just wanted to go on and give something for Mike to be like have some kind of motivation, or is to have some like some some like person to uh kind of see as a hero that had come from this same place. So In the very beginning of this piece, we have Jerry and Mike who are doing this graffitied thing under this bridge to have this memorial for Fat Waller. And so there's like a whole thing where it's like Fat Waller says, "Be kind, rewind." And so eventually we have a number of people who just kind of graffiti over it after some time. So we have it where we have Mike, we have Jerry, and so Mike is to go on and is to watch over this VHS rental thing, and so Jerry at one point is to go to Mike with all of this kind of makeup on, and Jerry wants Mike to go with him to this like power plant to go on and try to do something to get even with these people. So Mike goes along with it, and so Mike and Jerry both go on to this place. We have Jerry at first who goes up in this ladder, and Mike eventually is to follow him. So we have also Mr. Fletcher is to go on this brief getaway where he, of course, is to decide to go to some old friends and listen to some Fat Waller records and have these guys talk to Mr. Fletcher and how he can possibly improve his business going forward. And so Mr. Fletcher's with a number of these guys that are all talking about this certain brush that was to go on and like this liquid brush, and they had made a fortune on this online. And so Mr. Fletcher's like, so what do you think that I should go on and do? And the guys were like, well, yeah, you need to go to your competition and you need to just kind of see how you can benefit from them, how like you can go on and just do something better than they can, and then you're going to be flowing in the money. So, which doesn't exactly make sense because Mr. Fletcher is going on and renting movies. Like, he's not creating a brand new product, and these guys did that. And so it's like something a little bit different. Like, movies isn't exactly a niche thing, especially even in like 2008, but that is what it is. So, and like for those other guys, like that was like a niche item, so it's just two different things. So we had Mr. Fletcher as he was leaving on this train. He was trying to tell Mike, keep Jerry out of the store while he's gone. Mr. Fletcher was trying to write a note saying keep Jerry out, and Mike didn't understand what that writing was, and he basically just said that Mr. Fletcher just can't write then. But then, when Mike and Jerry are to go on and go up this ladder to try to get in this power plant, Mike was to write down a number of things, trying to figure out what Mr. Fletcher was trying to say. And he realized, he's like, oh, keep Jerry out. Oh, that's what it was. So Mike ditches Jerry to go off and like not hang out with him until Mr. Fletcher comes back. And so Jerry accidentally electrocutes himself after two cops were to make their way to see if they were to spot anybody, because maybe they heard of a number of people that were making their way here. So Jerry is to electrocute himself, And so the following day, Mike is to go on and be at the store, and Jerry is to be all electrocuted. And so he starts barfing right in front of the store. Mike now has to clean that up. And so Jerry is now explaining to Mike what had all happened. And so all of a sudden, we have this customer that is to go on and try to rent this film. Uh, and I believe this customer, I believe her name is Sherry. So we go on and we have this girl who goes on and rents this movie and then slowly but surely returns it because she's like, wait a minute, like this tape doesn't work. I'm not watching whatever movie this is, so give me back my dollar. So all of a sudden we have Mike who is to realize that every single one of the tapes are all warped. That every single one of them, like all the movie is gone. He's like, oh my god, like every single one of these movies are all gone. So we have it at one point where Jerry is to make his way back into the store, and when Jerry is to get close to the TV, Mike is realizing that Jerry is making the static kind of move up and down on the TV, and Mike is telling Jerry, it's like, well, hey, why is it that you can go on and make this like static happen when you move? And Jerry's like, I don't know. And Mike is like, oh my god, you're magnetized. And so they realize that Jerry is magnetized and that everything is just kind of sticking to him, as well as like Jerry is going on walking down this road and he smacks or he sticks into uh, like a traffic post, or he like goes on and sticks this metal fence and so on. So we don't get until like later in the film where Jerry goes on and is able to just pee out magnetism, if that's even a word, um, because Alma, who is to join the crew later on, is to help Jerry like drink this salt water, and then he pees it all out, and all the magnetism is to come out of his pee. He's like, oh my god, I'm cured. So, such a weird film. But so, all of a sudden, we have Miss Falswick, who is to come to this store and is to want to rent Ghostbusters because she has never seen it before, but it seems that her family is to say that it's a very good movie. So Mike and Jerry are trying to figure out what to tell this woman because they're like, yeah, like we're going through a remodeling stage. Like, I'm sorry. And so Mrs. Falwicks is to want to have this movie by the end of the night. So like, oh my god, what should we do? So Mike all of a sudden desperately tries to go on and is to try to rent a VHS of Ghostbusters somewhere, and nobody has it. Even to the point where like Mike goes to desperation and is to try to rent this movie from West Coast Videos. So going to their competitor, and so the guy's like, well, hey, like I knew that you guys were trying to scope me out and try to figure me out. And so Mike realizes that there is no way for him to get this VHS in time. So Mike just takes this whole idea to go on and make this movie up with Jerry. So Mike is saying that he's going to be Bill Murray and Jerry is going to be everyone else. So we go on and they of course first go on and remake Ghostbusters, and even the theme song isn't the same theme song because like Jerry like makes up the theme song, and I thought that that was so funny. I thought that it was so like creative for them to just try to remake the theme song. So we have Jerry's mechanic that goes on and is to be playing female parts, and so we have Jerry's mechanic who goes on to play like Sigourney Weaver's character, and that's actually kind of hilarious because in the later part of the film, we actually have Sigourney Weaver as Miss Lawson, who comes in later in the film to try and, of course, sue Mr. Fletcher for all of the like FBI like laws that they had broken in this film. And like I don't really understand like the real true like outcome of this movie. Like did like Mr. Fletcher spend like all that time in jail? Did like what happened? Because I really just don't understand it. Like it just feels like they were trying to build up suspense for no real reason. Like these guys were already behind the eight ball like when this movie got started, but then all of a sudden we just have Miss Lawson who comes in and is saying like, well, hey, like you have to pay us like $3 bajillion, and or you have to spend like 1,000,000 years in or 600 years in jail, and it's like, wait a minute, why? This makes no sense. Like, and so they go on and they destroy all these like VHSs, and they steamroll all of them, and again, it like makes no sense. Um, but anyways, so and then we have Sigourney Weaver, Miss Lawson, who's like, well, I guess we're the villain in this story, huh? Like, so after they go on and they do this version of Ghostbusters, and the movie is like 20 minutes long, because I guess these guys were to try to do this as quickly as possible. So the movie's 20 minutes long, and so come to find out after that, the the family members of Miss Failswick was to go and meet these guys, and we have like Manny and Q and Craig and Randy and all these other guys. They go on and they meet with these guys, and they're like, well, hey, like I liked this movie, like I liked the way this was done, so now I need to go on and I want another film, like I want to see like another film. So all of a sudden these guys are like, oh my god, like these people want to continue to see these movies, and so now both Jerry and Mike have to like continue to just randomly put all these movies together and do them like fairly quickly. So we go on, and the next thing that they have to forcibly do is they have to come up with Rush Hour 2. So we have it where, of course, Mike is playing Chris Tucker, and uh, Jerry's playing Lee from Rush Hour. So, or they're playing Carter and they're playing Lee from Rush Hour 2. So they go on and they are trying desperately to figure out a way to like jungle Jim and remake this movie and put this whole thing together. And so all of a sudden we go on and it gets to the point where Jerry is just tired of having to possibly kiss his mechanic. And so we finally have his mechanic who decides, like, you know what, like, I'm done with this. Like, I quit. And so now they have to go on and find some female to go on and do this movie with them. And so Jerry is to go on and go to this laundromat to find like just any woman that's there, and they end up finding a girl named Alma. So Alma has decided like, hey, sure, yeah, I'll do your movie for you, and they end up taking a woman's clothes to use it as their wardrobe. And I'm just like, they just stole this girl's clothes. So Alma's to go on and be involved in these movies, and so it gets to the point where supposedly like they have a lot of kissing scenes with both Jack Black and Melanie here. So Jerry and Alma have to supposedly kiss a lot, and then there's a thing later where Mike goes on, and Mike's like, well, hey, like it seems that Jerry and Alma like are in a lot of movies together. And Alma's like, well, what, are you jealous, Mike? And Mike's like, well, like, no, but and so we go on, and all of a sudden, like, there's supposedly a reasoning for this guy not wanting to do any scenes with Alma and kiss her. It's because supposedly she has like a mustache or something like that. She's like, really? I have a mustache? And he's like, well, I don't know. Maybe let me check. And so we get this moment where Alma's like, wait a minute, are you trying to kiss me? And he's like, well, like, what if I am? So, it's like this like weird tension here. So, but yeah, so we start after Rush Hour 2. We go on and we have to have them figure out a way to continue to make these movies. And so after we go on and we have them make RoboCop, they start to realize that maybe they should go on and try to figure out a quicker way to make a lot more of these movies. And so we have Alma, who calls them like Sweden or Swedish or whatever, some goofy thing. And so now we have to go on and like see like them trying to figure out all of this stuff as they make it up, to try to swindle people to just say like, hey, if you give us $20, we'll go on, we'll Swedish all these movies. And so that's when we start to see like the movie starting to really like quickly go on and be created, where we start to see like Driving Miss Daisy, where like Mike really doesn't want to go on and remake this film. And so we have Mike, who's to be the driver, and Jerry is to be like the guy in the back who's driving Miss Daisy. And so we're having like Jerry and Mike just talking about like, hey, who's that woman out there driving off to the side? And then we have Jerry, who's to kind of come up with like things of like trying to help Mike understand how to read and write and whatever. And so like there's just a lot of absurdity when they go on and do this, but then they recreate Driving Miss Daisy a lot later with both Danny Glover and or Mr. Fletcher's character and Failswick's character to just try to recreate that film. And because they start to realize that they want to go on and incorporate everyone in town, because that will make these movies even like quicker to put together. And so they start casting people, they start incorporating people of the town, they start giving people credit and so on and so forth. So here's when we start to make a lot of movies in one small area. So we start to rattle off all these movies. So the ones that we actually see in the film, but there's just a lot of other movies listed also. And so I'll just focus on the ones where like it seems like there's little clips that we see here. When We Were Kings, we have Jack Black who's going on and like putting on these boxing gloves, and they're talking about Muhammad Ali. We have 2001: A Space Odyssey, where we go on and we see um, when Mike is going on and running in that kind of circular thing. That's 2001: Space Odyssey, and we go on. We have Mike who's going on and just kind of walking, and it looks like he's in space. 2001: Space Odyssey. Uh, we have King Kong that is to, of course, be used in here, and it's kind of funny because Jack Black is to go on and do a King Kong movie, but this is actually supposedly the original King Kong that they were to go on and redo here, and so it wasn't like the Peter Jackson one; it was the original black and white King Kong that they tried to redo. We had a brief splash, and I mean splash, of Carrie, where we go on and we have a woman who is to be dunked uh, with with this possible blood of some kind or paint of some kind, and a woman was to be very upset because she thought it was going to be Kool-Aid, and Alma's like, "Well, I'm sorry, like that's just like what we had available." We have Men in Black. Two guys are going on and they're doing the scene where they're in the tunnel and they hit the red button in the Men in Black car and they kind of spin around with the car. That's the scene that they're using. There's a lot of times where Jerry and Mike are just coming up with these kind of like rando words to just say it's like, oh my god, like the world like is evolving or imploding or or some kind of goofy term of whatever that is technically somehow but it's like it just feels like they're making up words in some portions of this film. We had Boys in the Hood, which actually was like, oh okay, like maybe at some point I want to go on it and see Boys in the Hood. Like I really always heard good things about it, and I know that this movie really is a Spike Lee interesting film, and I always wanted to check it out. And so this movie might inspire me to go on and see Boys in the Hood. And then we have The Island of Dr. Moreau, which we have like Mr. Fletcher who has this like big massive gun, and he is to go through this place that they have to write the word the jungle. They also had to try to remake The Lion King, which I thought was funny, where we just have like these kind of like these cardboard things that are to be these lions, and like Jerry is going on and making stuff up as they go, and we have it where Mike is saying like, "Hey, this is a kids movie," as they're kind of cussing here. So, and then there's just like a number of movies that are just kind of like plastered all over the screen, but we never actually see a Swedish version of them or Swedish version of them. So all of a sudden we go on, and after they've made all of these movies and they're supposedly either 10 to 20 minutes long. So everybody in town is to go on and make all of these movies and help these guys make these films or remake them in a way. So eventually people were duped. And so Miss Lawson comes in here and is to tell everybody, like, well, hey, like, you can't sell these movies. There's a whole FBI warning on every single one of these things, and it's copyright infringement, and yada, yada, yada. So she takes a bulldozer or a steamroller to all of these movies and, like, Bashal, like, I guess we're the villains in this story. Meh. And so they had to figure out what the heck that they could do to try to make money to save this building. And Mr. Fletcher is to go on to every single one of these West Coast video stores and is to figure out how to eventually do what they're not doing. And so Mr. Fletcher finally comes back from his vacation or his time away, and he used to come back saying that he's finally going to go on and sell DVDs, and that uh, like they're going to need to get X amount of money to save this place. And so after the whole copyright thing, and like Miss Dawson just or Miss Lawson comes in there and then leaves, and nothing happens from that. They decided it's like, well, hey, how about instead of remaking all of these films, because we have the whole town and supporting this idea, Jerry's thinking it's like, well, hey, how about we go on and just make a film? Like, how about we just make anything? Just do something. So finally, we just have Mike with the quick idea of like, well, hey, how about instead of having Fat Waller, who never really lived in this town, how about we say that Fat Waller did live here and have a bunch of people make up a bunch of stories that he was to have lived here, and then we can justify like this building being stayed here and this whole entire town championing this movie. And so they go on, and this whole town is to go on and have all these stories and make up all these things. And so the whole town goes on to, one way or another, make this film. This kind of just very old fashioned black and white Fat Waller documentary that we see in the early stages of this film. And so they put this whole movie together, and then they decide to showcase it in the Be Kind Rewind store. And we had it at one point where both Jerry and Mike were trying to break into the West Coast videos to try to steal this guy's projector. And the guy who owns the place is to be sleeping there. So he goes on and he's like, hey guys, what are you doing? And we're like, oh, we're just here. And so they're like, well, hey, wait a minute. Like, you live here? And the guy's like, well, yeah, because times are tough. So they're like, well, like, you know what? Like, we'll go on and we'll just kind of like get out of here if, like, so the owner goes on and like, hey guys, I'll pay for the glass as long as like you don't tell anybody that I live here. That was the kind of the code of silence between the both of them. So when Jerry is to try to put on the movie for them to see on this TV, on this tube TV, all of a sudden the tube TV comes crashing down. And so like, oh crap, what should we do now? All of a sudden the West Coast video guy comes in with his projector, and they're like, yeah, we can see this via that. And so they go on and they show the sheets of this, and or they make these kind of like bed sheets as these projector things. And so not only can the people see this from inside the store, then people can also see the movie from outside the store, and they're kind of laughing and they're giggling and they're having a good time. And so we also have a bunch of these guys who are outside wanting to destroy this building. We have a guy who is to be Mr. Baker, who's outside, who's like, hey, like, why haven't these people left yet? And construction guys, why aren't you bulldozing this building? And they're like, well, hey, there's a bunch of people watching a movie in there. There's nothing we can do. So when Mr. Fletcher is to go on and check outside, and the whole town is all there watching this movie along with these people inside, and they're having a good laugh, like, we go on and we have Mr. Baker that's like, you know what, like, there's nothing we can do. Just Mr. Fletcher, because just go into that building and just live there and whatever, and just like all is to be right in the world. And so really with that last movie and everybody just enjoying it in town, like, they go on and happy ending. They just happy ending it. They just don't go on and show any aftermath of what anything happened. There isn't any repercussions. It's just like, okay, well that's how things wrapped up. So even with their like being competitor stuff, even with there being just uh like a lot of people just wanting to go on and take money from Mr. Fletcher and all this stuff, and like hey, you need $6,000, yada yada yada. We just turn around and uh we just have movie magic that is to go on and just like happy ending everything with this movie. And so yeah, like, so that's how the movie just ends, with us watching this documentary of Fat Waller, um and just enjoying whatever this movie was to be. So with that said, I think I'm going to get out of here so I can go on and hopefully either rest for the day or go on to possibly do one more thing and then call it a day. We'll figure that out. More likely, I'll probably just rest for the rest of the day. I don't know. We'll, we're figuring out something every day that we kind of come out here and go on and try to do a review. So I'm gonna get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.